Give me a lieutenant! Give me a lieutenant! Where's the lieutenant? So, that's my little intro to this video, and yes, we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about, I'm all alone, except for the voices in my head. Maybe. About Jeremy Dewitte again, because he's just the perfect case study for so much of narcissism, delusional disorder, pathological lying, histrionics, just cluster B in general, in my opinion, of course, as I am not a mental health professional. But it's interesting nonetheless how he trots out basically every tactic in the book for someone who exhibits the DSM signs of those disorders that I had just mentioned. So, again, if you're unfamiliar with Jeremy Dewitte, I created a playlist on the videos where I use him as an example, and there's information in those videos that aren't just personally about him. It gets into people like him and how to spot their tactics and their manipulation, because they are very good at their craft. People like him that are that confident and have that much command presence. I did a video on command presence, by the way, you should watch it. Have honed their craft, and they are confident, and they have gotten away with most of what they do for a long time. Check out those videos, especially my narcissistic case study on Jeremy Dewitte. It'll give you the Cliff Notes version of who he is and what he does. I highly recommend that you also check out PoliceTube, and you can hear and see Jeremy in his own words from his own camera footage and see how he acts and just see for yourself exactly why he is perhaps the best narcissistic case study. But today specifically, I want to talk about how Dewitte always asks for a lieutenant or sometimes even a captain when he encounters the police and they try to, hold him to the standards of Florida or Chicago law, and why, Dewitte always wants somebody of a higher rank. Now, part of this is his entitlement, part of it is his delusion. So, his entitlement is he believes, or seems to believe, in my opinion, that he knows more than those on the scene, and that would be, typically police officers of the rank of officer, corporal, or sergeant. And as the best I can understand, the sergeant on most police scenes is the scene commander. I'm not exactly sure on that. My background's fire and EMS, so I was never in law enforcement, but it seems to be like if there's a group of, say, 4 or 5 officers, there is a sergeant on scene, and it is his scene, similar to how, like, a smaller fire scene that hasn't gone multiple alarms, a captain for us would be the scene commander, obviously a battalion chief if it gets bigger, but we're not talking about fire today. So, on these various times where Dewitte's been arrested, he always, tries to talk the sergeant into letting him go, or how he didn't do anything. And when that doesn't go his way, or if it's the sergeant happens to be Keith Vidler, who sadly lost his job unjustly, and I feel very sorry for the man. I understand what it's like to, lose your badge unjustly for speaking up and trying to do the right thing and hold somebody who has done wrong accountable, and that person tries to wiggle out of it because of their connections. Oh, the good old boys club, how I hate thee. I'll burn you down someday. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Yeah. So, Jeremy will often, when he cannot convince the sergeant that he knows more than the sergeant, because of course he does, because in Jeremy's mind, he's a 4-stripe. He's got 12 years of Army service, 7 as a Green Beret, and also check out Green Beret Posers. They did a video on Dewitte as well for his fake Green Beret claims. Check out that site in general, and also if you want to check out some awesome Stolen Valor videos, probably it is my favorite, but probably also the best would be Former Buds 131, which is Don Shipley's channel. Don Shipley, to me, never met the man. We emailed back and forth like twice in 2015 when I was looking into joining the Navy OCS to go in the Naval Intelligence. I was basically asking him, is 28 too old? Like, tell me the truth, because he seems like a very straight shooter, funny guy. Just check out his videos. They're entertaining as hell, and he's given him and his family have given a lot to this country, as have pretty much everybody who served in the armed forces who received an honorable discharge or sadly, died in the line of duty. Anyway, Dewitte feels that he is above a sergeant and demands a lieutenant or a captain because, if he can't convince the sergeant, then he'll convince somebody higher. And it also ties into his delusions because he often, and his contractors, which he often refers to officers for his now former company called Metro State, which is a funeral escort company. They are not a state certified agency. They are a private business that provides that service, similar to like a private security function, although they don't have, some of the rights that a security company has. Many security companies, their personnel are authorized to carry guns. And DeWitt, being a registered sex offender, can't even own a real gun. And, so he carries a pepper ball gun to look like a real gun. And even then, he chooses one that looks like a Glock instead of a revolver because he's not cool enough to carry a revolver. But we'll talk about revolvers another day. I will do a video that'll probably be unpopular and it'll lose me subscribers, but I do want to do a video on me being, progressive politically, explaining my rather centrist views on guns, and I'm gonna do it because it's how I feel, and maybe some things may make sense to people, and find some middle ground on that gun issue. But anyway, back to DeWitte. I'll try to stop sidetracking. So he tries to convince a sergeant to get him a lieutenant. Like I said, DeWitte refers to himself as the commander of Metro State, as his employees, which are private contractors, actually refer to him as that as well. So he sees himself on par with somebody of higher rank than a sergeant, because in his mind he is equal to law enforcement. He tries to use their lingo and, acts as if he's one of them. He certainly dresses as if he's one of them, and in his mind he is one of them and is their equal. However, he is not. He thinks he's part of some brotherhood, which he certainly doesn't have. While there are some cops that do seem to lack integrity, I would say the majority of them, do not. And DeWitte is certainly somebody who, thankfully, he never got a badge and a gun. He didn't slip through the cracks. And some people do in every profession. I mentioned Don Shipley. I'll quote him here. Don Shipley spoke in one of his videos. This resonated with me. He said, in every industry, and he said, including the Navy SEALs, I think it's in his video about John Zelenock, that there's about 10% that shouldn't be there, that slip through the cracks. And, after I saw that video, I don't know, in like 2015, I started noticing that. And it's like, yeah, it's about right. And that 10% can, people who got lucky, people who fooled people, nepotism, good old boy shit, cronyism, maybe people that are burnt out. But, in DeWitte's mind, he is a high-ranking pseudo or para law enforcement officer. So he thinks that given his rank in his business and his made up years of service, that he is entitled to special treatment. And this is not unlike what is commonly referred to by many people as Karens, who always want a manager. They always feel that they're above speaking to who's ever speaking to them, and they deserve special treatment. And if only they could talk to somebody, of a higher rank or whatever, that person will understand, because, like DeWitte, he thinks he is of that higher rank in his own mind. So only someone that is equal to him can understand and appreciate his vast knowledge and circumstances. So, that's a narcissistic tactic in itself. Always trying to act as if the person who is trying to enforce whatever rules or codes on you is not worthy to discipline you, that you are by definition above them, and when they don't give you your way, you just demand somebody of a higher rank, which, you're not entitled to. And of course, some may argue that some of the police's treatment of Jeremy is questionable, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but I do know that the way to handle that is to file a civil suit and not to scream like a 5-year-old for somebody of a higher rank on the highway. Another thing with him, he tries to cite Florida laws all the time to law enforcement professionals and acts as if they don't know what the code really means. But part of Jeremy's delusions is trying to convince people of the law enforcement profession that their interpretation of whatever code is, and that, especially that 1976 one, is wrong, and that Jeremy has it right and that they have it wrong. What they learned in their police academy is wrong. Jeremy knows the truth. His interpretation's right. And the end all be all for that is, yeah, he would have every right to try to fight it or change it, but I believe, and again, not a lawyer, that interpretation of statutes and state law would ultimately fall to that state's Supreme Court, and it could perhaps go to the Great Hall itself, which, yeah, the Great Hall ain't so great. I think it's time the Democrats try to resurrect the 1936 Judicial Reform Act, one of the things FDR wanted to do and didn't get it through, but it is something we need very much now. Biden is no FDR. Yeah. Anyway, DeWitte's delusions make him feel as if he knows better than everybody around him, and instead of listening to what some unworthy lower rank sergeant has to say, he will continue to demand somebody of higher rank. He'll try to twist their words. He thinks in his mind that he's smarter than everybody else in the room, and that's a common thing with narcissists too. They're just at a different level than everybody, and sometimes that because of that different level, nobody else can even understand what they're really trying to say, what they're saying, and that they're twisting their words because they don't know the true meaning. It's a narcissistic tactic, trying to twist words to make something fit what they want it to fit. Like, I'll tell you what the definition of is means. Like that. That's another good example. You all know who that is. I dust that impression off quite a bit because vocal crinkles are easy for me to do with my laryngitis ravaged voice that I hate the sound of. I don't watch any of my videos, so yeah, you can ask questions all you want. I'm not going to go back and watch it. I hate the sound of my own voice. But it's important to know that, to be able to see that in people like Jeremy Dewitte, that sometimes when dealing with somebody who exhibits those narcissistic tendencies, that there's no reasoning with them. In their mind, they're right. That in their head, however, they twist the facts to suit them being right, they're going to do it. And also they have that inherent sense of entitlement, and that either the rules don't apply to them or that the rules apply differently to them. In Jeremy Dewitte's case, he feels as if either the rules don't apply, or if they do, he's entitled to the same courtesy that a law enforcement officer would get, because in his mind, he's allowed to act like a law enforcement officer because he sees himself as one, he dresses as one, he rides motorcycles that are, as looking alike as one as he can, while, blurring the line between impersonation and not. He was arrested for impersonation a few years ago, and it was on Dr. Phil. It's an interesting little watch. And he was also convicted of impersonating a police officer when he was 18 and in an Explorer program. So certainly this is something that seems to have been ingrained in Dewitte for a long time, and there's no breaking that in his mind. In his mind, he is rightfully a police officer. He is entitled to act like a police officer, to dress like a police officer, behave like a law enforcement officer when he's on the road. He pulls people over. He'll deny it, but it's on video. You can, watch the videos on PoliceTube and see what you think. And when confronted with it, he doesn't accept the reality that he's not law enforcement. He'll, fall back on, I'm a state certified agent because he has a LLC license, which that's not any type of, certification from a state. Like, I'm a nationally registered, EMT, even though I'm not currently working as an EMT. I do hold that certification from, the National Registry in the state of Virginia and the state of Pennsylvania. But, there is nothing like that. I use that as an example because there's nothing like that for funeral escorts. He simply registered his business because, you got to do that. You got to pay taxes. And, if you see this type of things in other people, you have to remember that in their mind, you're not allowed to be right. That they just know. Their interpretation is by definition right. No matter how much facts, logic, and even authority you have, there is no convincing them that they are wrong. Because in their mind, and if it's something like Dewitte, in his mind, he is the ultimate law enforcement officer. He is everything that every cop should be, when really he's a delusional, narcissistic bully and sex offender. Yeah, he is about as scummy as it can get. But, in his mind, he's better than all the law enforcement officers who try to make him obey by, in most cases, Florida law, like everybody else. And he's very good at fooling them at a lot of times. Especially you watch the Chicago Jeremy Dewitte video. He had those Chicago officers fooled for most of that video that he was Florida law enforcement. And he eventually had to admit it in the end, but you should have watch that video and see how much, like, he gets off on that con, getting off on, making those officers think that he's one of them, that he's in the brotherhood, and especially when they start to give him courtesy because of that, which I don't agree with personally. All laws should apply to everyone equally. There should be no courtesy based on what one's profession is. But that was like the ultimate high for him. He didn't have to sit and scream and ask for a lieutenant like he did in Florida. He was like, oh, they're treating me, they think I'm one of them. He screamed, my badge, where's my badge, Rania? And was actually calling for his wife to get his, made up costume badge that he bought for Metro State. And they were buying it hook, line, and sinker. So he didn't have to fall back on his, oh, you guys don't know what you're doing. Get me somebody of, higher rank, like that wears 4 stripes on their shirt, like I do. But he gave his stripes to himself because in most paramilitary organizations, police and fire, a stripe usually, and it can differ, signifies 5 years of service. Sometimes it's 4. Dewitte wears 4, and he has admitted that his business has existed for, I think when he was arrested and actually went to jail, 10 years. He counts his made up 12 years in the United States Army towards wearing those stripes. That's how far gone this guy appears to be. So when you deal with somebody like that, look for the signs that, like Dewitte exhibits, of the delusions, of the I'm better than you, I know what I'm talking about, even though I haven't received the training. You don't know. You can't know what I know. You're just wrong. And when that doesn't work, referring to acting like a child and shouting for somebody who outranks you. Most likely, and in Dewitte's case, it's important to note that he always screams for somebody of a rank that isn't present. He wants somebody, to stop what they're doing and come to the scene because everybody there is incompetent and, unworthy to arrest him or explain Florida statute to him. So I think that's another important little video on studying the fascinating narcissistic case study of the one and only Jeremy Dewitte. Like I said, I'm no expert on mental health or on law enforcement or on Jeremy Dewitte. It's just my opinions, things I find interesting, patterns that I see, because, INFJ mind sees patterns everywhere. And I wanted to point it out and see, if those who stumble upon this video and take the time to listen to me ramble on, exhibit the behaviors and the patterns that Dewitte has in other people, if you've seen other people act like that. And again, since Dewitte's on camera a lot, it's someone you can study if you want to learn some of the tactics of a narcissist, especially in his case, a narcissist in trouble, having to having been confronted by, an authority figure, which I think law enforcement may be considered to most the ultimate authority figure because they're the ones that can haul you off to jail. Anyway, I hope this video was informative and it perhaps helped you put some pieces together in your mind in a situation in your life which you are in, and I am sorry if you are in a situation in life with anyone who acts like Jeremy Dewitte. Just remember to trust your intuition if you see someone exhibiting Dewitte-like behaviors, and don't sell out your integrity just to make someone like Dewitte pay. Sooner or later, the more arrogant they are, the harder they fall when they finally get so arrogant that they think nobody can hold them accountable.